Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. Our topic today is the United States and Israel's war versus Iran. To discuss this, it is our pleasure to invite Lieutenant General Kamal Davar, old veteran of both the 1965 and 1971 war, and was the first Director General of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and presently is the President of the Delhi Forum for Strategic Studies. In the 1991 Gulf War, what the US-led coalition forces attacked near Baghdad, claiming it was a biological weapons laboratory, turned out to be a baby milk factory. The incident became a prominent example of the intelligence controversies about Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction and made it more difficult to differentiate between civilian dual use and dual use infrastructure and hidden weapons production. In 2003, the United States attacked Iraq based on largely false assumptions that Saddam Hussein possessed stockpiles of weapons of mass destruction, held active chemical, biological and chemical weapons programs, and maintained ties with terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda. Investigations after the invasion revealed that these assumptions were based on flawed or misrepresented intelligence, and no active WNDs, programs, or links to the 9/11 attacks were found. On February 28, 2026, following failed negotiations, claims of imminent threats, and Iran's alleged continued efforts to build a nuclear weapon, the US and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, the name selected by Trump, a series of coordinated military attacks on Iran aiming to dismantle its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, prevent regional attacks, and potentially force a regime change. For 20 days since this began, this largely troopless war has amounted to missile strikes and aerial bombardment causing significant civilian casualties, including at least 165 schoolgirls, and injuring many others in Iran. The United States have deployed a formidable array of weapons, and so has Israel. But what seems to have been maybe not expected by both US and Israel is the kind of response that they've got from Israel so far. A response very strong and sustained so far. Sir, I invite your thoughts on this.
Thank you, South Asia Monitor and Col Anil Bhat, for getting me to share my thoughts on the current West Asia war, which threatens to engulf the entire world. Anyway, one of its major ramifications, that is the unprecedented energy crisis, has already impacted the world. Now, before we get down to the specifics concerning this unnecessary war, let's also remember that never since the end of World War II in 1945 has the world come to another enactment of a global conflagration as the currently raging Middle East war. And now, today it is on its 26th day with virtually no end in sight. Now, historically speaking, wars do not resolve any major differences between adversaries who flout their so-called national interests or the misplaced megalomaniac and misplaced ambitions of certain political leaders who drive such conflicts. And nobody is the winner at the end. Now, 28th February, as you mentioned, US and Israel, or should I say Israel and the United States, launched Operation Epic Fury by attacking Iran, hoping for a regime change or destroying Iran's nuclear ambitions and its ability to attack Israel. But as you also mentioned, is Iran struck back and surprised the Americans and its allies in the Gulf region, and it attacked all the Gulf state countries, all the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Now, let's also not forget that on 27 February, that is a day before, when negotiations were on, there were reports coming out, reliable reports, that Iran had agreed not to enrich uranium in the months to come. But all of a sudden, which means this must have been pre-planned by Israel and US, that no matter what is the stand of the Iranians, we will go in and attack. So next day, pronto, they went in for this unnecessary attack, and now the world has been plunged into a crisis which, let's hope, the world comes out of it and nothing worse gets on. There's been unprecedented devastation both in Iran and Israel and Tel Aviv and all that, and unnecessarily innocents and civilians, as you mentioned, also 190 or 182 children in a school in Tehran have got slaughtered. For what was their fault? So Iran surprised them back, and it is now fighting with all it has, with all its determination. And the Americans and the Israelis forgot that this is not Venezuela. Iran is a old civilization. They have their own, respect for each other, for themselves, for their civilization and their religion and their way of life. And unnecessarily, the Israelis and the US attacked them. And there is, see, these days, what happens is with weaponry and precision guided munitions and high explosives and all sorts of things, today, collateral damage occurs, a hell of a lot of collateral damage occurs. Now, Tel Aviv has never seen such, some of their buildings also getting destroyed within Tel Aviv. So I don't know what is the end game or what were the terminal objectives the US and Israel had carved out for themselves. The raise I can understand, but yet the response has always been generally disproportionate. And now I think that they're rowing, I am sure, with a fair number of Americans, more than 50% Americans also are not supporting their own president in this so-called war against Iran. So these are my initial thoughts, and you can ask me any other questions as we go along.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, well, you just mentioned that even Americans are not happy. But what have they been able to do about it, sir?
Right.
In the case of Israel, there could be some justification because Israel came under a horrendous attack by the Hamas, and the Hamas are connected. Iran has been connected to the Hamas and to the Houthis and to the Hezbollah also. At least Iran has been providing moral support to all three and material support to some or at some stage or the other. But for the US, and I think particularly under Trump, we are seeing the most naked kind of compulsive, hegemonic, almost compulsive colonial hegemony, sir. It's amounting to the Hindi word that I can think of is dadagiri, but a very very deadly kind of dadagiri. How do you think this is going to play out, sir? You mentioned a very pertinent point about even Americans are not happy about it. We are hearing some very sane voices say that, but he's still at it.
See, the Americans have put up a 15-point plan to the Iranians, And the Iranians have also put up certain conditions. So some back, though the Iranians have sort of generally not agreed that we are talking to the Americans, but the American president has said so. So he couldn't be pulling such a fast one. Though President Trump has a habit of saying something in the morning and changing his stance by the afternoon, and then once again changing it in the evening. All that is apart. I think there are some backdoor deliberations going on between the Iranians and through intermediaries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and even Pakistan has been named as one of the so-called, interlocutors for some mediation, or at least as the host. Or that's what they're talking about, and trying to tell India, trying to score a brownie point against India. Now, having said that, what may happen is anybody's guess. Now, the Americans have also put in, Americans and Israelis have put in some very strong conditions. You see, enrichment of uranium is fine, but to tell them that you will not have missiles of a particular range and beyond that is really, I don't think the Iranians will accept it. They are also a very proud people, a proud civilization, and as long as I think everybody must take a step back from their so-called stated positions. Otherwise, the negotiations will again fail. And as you know, Trump has given from 48 hours notice to 5 days, and now he's given a month's notice. Commencing today. So that's fine, and so that negotiations can take place and fructify to the levels of which both Iranians and the Israeli Americans will agree. But I don't think Israel is very keen on these negotiations to succeed. It appears from media reports and things like that. But let's hope that better sense prevails. And I would say in this so-called negotiations or mediation and all, that India, which is in touch with some of the leaders in the Gulf Council, and only today, President Trump spoke to our Prime Minister today only. So I think India must put in the case very forcefully. We have moral authority. There's no denying it. Some people feel in this country that we have no leverage. No, we have, I think, leverage because of our past reputation. India is India. And so, with our strategic autonomy behind us and a sense of morality in our politics, which we've always had since we got independence, I think India will have, and we have, the Iranians speak to us. They also know that India also has a huge Shia population, and also they've been friendly with us. The Americans are, so is Israel. The Americans, of course, play a bit of a double game when it comes to India. Let me be very frank about it, unfortunately. But the fact remains that India should try and offer its good offices, its country also for some mediation, or at least talk to them so that some sense arrives and the world does not suffer.
And sir brought it out very clearly, and that India must try to do that. All we can give, some, and you also mentioned about the double game that the US plays. In the best of days, and the best of times of India-US relations, we got to face it. There's always been the U.S. deep state, well in action in trying all kinds of stunts against India, and so is it now. But if you go back a year ago, sir, when we when we implemented Operation Sindoor, in barely 4 days, and ruthlessly it was unprecedented the way we clamped down on Pakistan, both on their terrorist networks and on their military assets. Look at his Trump's reaction then, sir. The less said, the better. Now it becomes so difficult, sir, because we've just had a case of barely 2 days ago is saying, um, I'm stopping all attacks for 5 days. And that was maybe not even 5 hours or so later. There were, and I think there may be some financial game here, financial stakes here. But whatever be the case, so it becomes very difficult. India, I think so far we can give it uh, mm, some credit that it has been able to have a fair balance with Iran. The result being that at least our ships and tankers are getting through the Hormuz Straits. Um,
Absolutely.
while I mean, this war is so different in so many ways. Uh, it is, I think, very important. And you mentioned about Pakistan. Pakistan being intermediaries, I think, a rude jokes. It is a country which is a producer of terrorism, a supporter, producer, sponsor of terrorism. And anyway, um, uh, what do you feel is other uh, anything further that India can do, sir?
No, one I said is that we've got the channels of communication open with both Israel and US and the Iranians, and our foreign minister is also nearly every day, I think, speaking to his counterparts across.
Yes, 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 sir.
So that point is there. Plus, India can also indulge in some humanitarian assistance to, for example, we can send some humanitarian assistance to Iran also. There's nothing wrong with it. Humanitarian, I'm saying, not any military assistance. And the other thing is, I think we missed out on one important point since we are both military, that the Americans have alerted their 82 Airborne Division and
Oh,
Marines also, who are moving towards maybe Kargaland or somewhere. And if the Americans do that, they do not know what will happen, how many, body bags they'll have to take back. Because
you said
people
it,
must
sir.
realize the geography of Iran. It's a mountainous country,
Yes,
and it is very difficult to advance with the even if you have adequate boots on the ground. There can never be any adequate number of boots on the ground. So the Americans must desist from this temptation of launching their 82nd Airborne Division and the Marines and all. But I'm a little alarmed, militarily speaking, as far as this, unless and until the Americans are trying to, pose some sort of a threat to the Iranians. So I think the America would be well advised not to put any boots on the
uh,
ground.
sir, you said it. The America is reading about maybe up to 5,000 or more. It started with 2,000, but it's 5 to 7,000 or whatever number of thousands it is, sir. Iran's trump card, so to speak, sir, pun intended, is a production of drones at the rate of 20,000, 20,000 apiece, and ranging from that, and there's plenty of them, and just drones uh, for their machinery as well as their men. These drones can be, very, very dangerous. And their other great weapon is the Khurramshahr, a 13-meter long missile which goes up to 20. They've got enough of firepower, and they've got guts, they've got determination, which we hope it doesn't come to, because uh, one fears that there may be far too many casualties for the Americans, and they may not find too many of Iranian troops on the ground, sir. All they'll be an easy target for these, the latest weapon of today, drones. Do you see any effect that because even Israel, sir, Israel is still at it despite the kind of uh, pulverization that Iran has done of some places in Tel Aviv. Again,
Yeah.
Lebanon also. Uh, One hopes and prays that things get because they already touchwood. India has not felt the felt the effect so much. One has filled petrol today in Bombay. It's still 103 rupees 50 paise. It's
Yeah.
not yet. What I'm trying to say, sir, it's not yet been raised.
Yeah, good. India is handling the overall crisis in a good manner. But I would say, since we are both military, as I had said, there are many lessons for India also to learn from this
Of
this
course, sir.
war. And one of them is, of course, that we have to now change or really go into the tactics, and the our equipment policies and the not only from the Russo-Ukrainian war, but this one also, that how asymmetric warfare is now becoming very important, and how very low cost equipment like drones, other unmanned platforms can outdo $1 million missiles and things like that.
Yes.
So I'm sure the three armed forces, the three services, or our Indian armed forces would be going into all these details. This is one major lesson which you have to learn to imbibe, is to really study the all the nuances of this asymmetric warfare, and how new weaponry, new tactics, and new strategies should be put into place as far as our operational preparedness is concerned. And the other point is, I feel that security preparedness and all the, as they say, the constituents of a comprehensive national power, it must be gone into it. And security is a 24/7 endeavor, and you cannot, and there's nothing available off the shelf. So the Indian Armed Forces must very seriously take into account, what we need, and the government must give, allocate additional funds or things like that, and we are prepared for the next battle and not prepared for the previous battle, which we have fought with distinction in 65 and 70, or the Kargil war or things like that. We have to prepare ourselves to the various nuances of asymmetric warfare.
Very well brought out, sir. Although it's a consolation that um, what we displayed in Operation Sindoor was, I think, for a lot of us a pleasant surprise, because there were a lot of, as um, strategic analysts or as defense observers, commentators. There's so many laments we had. We don't have this. We should have this. We don't do this. We should do this. Well, in Sindoor it was actually done, and Sindoor proved that a lot of our deficiencies have been made good. This Atmanirbharta, which used to be sort of parroted, it was actually, we saw it implemented, sir. But that should certainly not make us complacent, sir. It must not make us complacent. There's still so much to do, so much to learn. And like I said, sir, although we are not new to asymmetric warfare at all, sir. What have we been uh, doing with Pakistan? It's one of the classic examples of asymmetric warfare. But here in all other aspects also, sir, where equipment is concerned, etc., sir. Um, I must thank you for bringing out a lot of important factors, sir. And is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, very briefly, you also mentioned about Atam Nirbharta. Self-reliance should be, we should work 24/7 for self-reliance, not only in our arms and equipment and platforms and weaponry, but also in diversifying and ensuring what do you do for sources of energy, whether it's
Sure,
wind power, whether it's
sure,
solar power, whether it's diversifying your purchases. Because you see, for an emerging global power, if you were getting 87% of your energy sources from outside, it is not, it will be very
sure.
difficult for us to in moments of crisis. So we have to find a way out for alternative sources of power and energy, and of course our own Atam Nirbharta in our defense equipment.
And I think for the rest of the country, sir, um, capitalize on production of electricity, because I hope it doesn't, we don't have to fall on it, but that may that may be one uh, source of energy we may have to fall back on for the kitchens of the our
Absolutely.
normal the normal man's kitchen going.
True.
Thank you very much, sir. All the best, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure, as always, talking to you. God bless. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir.